أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to you all. Thank you so much for joining us on this the last 10 days of Ramadan, inshallah. And it's afternoon here in London, the UK. Wherever you may be, whether it's morning or evening or nighttime, welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us. Now, we are honored here this afternoon to have an esteemed guest to present an important topic during this blessed month of Ramadan, which is, of course, the month of the Qur'an. We have here Dr. Musharraf Hussain Al-Azhari, who will be talking about studying the life-changing message of the Qur'an. Now, just to give an introduction to Dr. Musharraf is the Chief Executive of the Karimia Institute in Nottingham in the UK and a trustee of Muslim Hands, an emergency and relief work charity. Formerly, Dr. Musharraf was the chairman of the Christian Muslim Forum in 2008 and 2010, and also was formerly the vice chair of the Association of Muslim Schools. Dr. Musharraf has a PhD in biomedical sciences. After 12 years as a scientist, he decided to dedicate himself to serving his country through the developing Muslim communities in the UK. For the past 30 years, he has been studying, including a period of at Dar al-Ulum and the university, Al-Azhar University, teaching and writing. He has written 20 books, mashallah, about traditional Islamic teachings to help Muslims practice their religion, and more than 300 essays. And many of you would be receiving his weekly Jummah reminders as well, mashallah. Some of his popular works also include The Majestic Qur'an, a new plain English translation. And I've got a copy here for myself, mashallah. This is a new plain English translation of the meaning that Dr. Musharraf, mashallah, has completed. I know then that he's going to be talking about this afternoon, inshallah. Just to give you an idea of the format for those of you that have not been to our webinars before, the speaker will speak for approximately half an hour, inshallah, and then we will open out for questions to our virtual audience here, inshallah. And the way that the questions work is that we would prefer you to ask your questions verbally. I think a few weeks ago we were relying on sort of written questions, but I think we've become quite accustomed to having these webinars now. So I think verbal questions are preferred. So you simply need to put up your hand. There's a button at the bottom which says under reactions. If you just put up your hand, and then we will ask you to ask your question. Alternatively, you can write the word speak, S-P-E-A-K, in the chat box, and then inshallah you can ask your question there as well. Okay. Ultimately, you can ask questions in the chat box, but we will prefer the verbal questions, inshallah. Okay. Right. So over to you, Dr. Musharraf.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, Brother Babar, thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity. May Allah make it a source of blessings in this blessed month. And we're talking about a blessed book. نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين صدق الله مولانا العظيم وبلغنا رسوله النبي الكريم. My dear brothers and sisters, wonderful teachers, I'm also a teacher. All my life I've been teaching, and I'm really very proud. 3 out of my 4 children are teachers, so I've done something right there. So Alhamdulillah, You know, Allah has blessed us with so many ni'mah, so many gifts and favors that we really cannot count them. وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. The Quran says in Surah An-Nahl. If you were to count the favors of Allah, you just couldn't do it. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Which favors and gifts of your Lord will you deny? So really, and amongst all those many gifts is the gift of the Qur'an. And you know, I think if I said that this is the greatest gift, I don't think anybody will disagree with it. The Qur'an is really the greatest gift that Allah has given us. But perhaps the greatest gift, and perhaps the greatly neglected gift as well, to be honest. So much so that even the Prophet ﷺ laments, وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّ إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. You know, even the Prophet says, Ya Allah, my people abandoned the Qur'an. And so what does it mean they abandoned? Mahjuran actually means took a flight from it, okay? Fled from it. In other words, ignored it, didn't use it. You know, it's just like, you know, somebody in a very different, is in a snowstorm, okay? And yet he does have the gloves, very tough gloves. He's got a very good hat to protect his head from, you know, freezing. But he just doesn't know he's got it. He doesn't know how to use them. That is how dumb he is. What will happen to him? He will lose his life even. And so, you know, so when the Prophet says that, they just ignored it. I think, to be honest, when I reflect on the situation we are facing with regards to our relationship with the Quran, I really do find how you know, exact this verse is. Because we Muslims now have reduced the Quran to a reading book. A reading book, not in traditional and the way you are used to as teachers. When you set a reading book to somebody, what do you mean? Read this, understand it, and we're going to have a comprehension test to make sure you have understood every sentence, every paragraph of it. You know what it's about. No, no, no. That's not the reading we Muslims are used to. We're used to reading that is soporific for us, that puts us to sleep, that as I am reading, I am doing 100 other things in my head because I'm not really understanding it. I'm not interested in the understanding. I am just there to get lots and lots of sawab, ajr, and merits for the akhirah. So, you know, so we really have disengaged with the Quran to a large extent. So we've now forgotten how to understand this book. This is due to several factors. Professor Abdul Halim, may Allah prolong his life, the great translator of the Quran as well, he talks about how Muslims, Mufassirin in particular, have had this atomistic approach to the Quran. So they take a word of the Quran or a phrase of the Quran or a verse of the Quran and then focus on it, sometimes without actually looking at the context of it. And we Muslims have now got used to this, and many of us will know verses of the Quran, but a verse is only a part of a passage, of a section. It's got a context, but I have no clue what the context of it is. So as a consequence, you know, we really don't understand the sections, the themes of the Quran, the stories of the Quran. You know, we just don't know the stories. And so what's been the main reason for it? Well, the major reason is that, you know, 85% of, 70% of Muslims are non-Arabs and they don't understand Arabic. Even those ulama who learn Arabic for 10 years, to be honest, they cannot, most of them. except the very top 10% bright ones, perhaps will be able to understand it. So I'm not surprised people, are not, are not in touch with it. And this is where translations are so important, and we haven't given them the importance they deserve, really. And I think really we need to come back to studying the Quran in our mother tongue. But before we do that, we do need to learn a few things about the Quran, its nature, how special this book is, how unique it is. What is it about? What are the themes of this book? Okay, and of course its structure. It has a very unique structure. I'm not going to talk about that ring structure of the Quran, which is an amazing, and I've, alhamdulillah, for many surahs, I've done that. And in my translation, you can actually begin to see this ring structure coming out. Although I wasn't actually aware of this 6 years ago, of the ring structure. It's quite a recent sort of development. All I was aware was of people like Fakhruddin Razi talking about how the beginning of a surah and the end of the surah are actually they complement one another, and they actually are continuation. The whole surah is a one unit. In fact, some of the Mufassirin like Imam Farahi of India, and one of his great students, Imam Maulana Amin Islahi, rahmatullahi ta'ala. These people actually regard, the whole Quran actually as one unit. It is one unit. It is actually one book with a very clear major theme, minor themes. Shah Waliullah talked about 5 different major themes of the Quran in his book Al-Fawzul Kabir, which I teach to my students. It's an amazing book. He wrote this book in 1740 when after he's the first translator of the Quran in Persian. He did it in Persian because India's official language was Persian. Okay, so he did it in Persian, and he got lot of flack and a lot of criticism, very severe criticism from the ulama. Why do you do this? What's the point of this? Okay, and of course he wrote this book Al-Fawzul Kabir, in which he talks about what is this book really about? Let me tell you what its themes are, who is it for, and how you need to study it. So that's really what it's about. So what I want to do in this talk of mine is actually 15 lectures of mine I've condensed into 30 minutes. So you can just imagine I'm really condensing and distilling at least 15 lectures, which is one big book of mine in Usul al-Tafsir that I teach to my students. And I'm trying to condense all that into 30 minutes for you. So we'll have inshallah, I hope we'll have a very rich conversation. But the aim is this. I want to really talk about what are the effective approaches to the study of this great book. First, I'm trying to get you to understand how great and wonderful this book is. I normally talk about, what makes this book very special. And then I'll talk about that in a minute. And then I'll talk about, what is guidance? What is hidayah? Because the Quran is huda. It is guidance. It is guidance. And so we need to really understand the concept of guidance, really. And then I'm going to really talk at the end about what are some effective tips that I can give you as somebody. Why can I give you tips? You might say you're patronizing us. No, I'm not really patronizing you. I'm actually a teacher and as somebody who loves the Quran, and I've been teaching it for nearly 40 years, and I've been a hafiz of it, a qari of it, a serious student of it for more than 50 years now, alhamdulillah. So that's why I think I can just offer you a few tips if you would like to have them, all right? But it's a humble presentation to you. Okay, let me just begin by talking what makes the Quran a very special book. So the first thing is, the Quran explains the purpose of our lives. That is why it is really so important and so amazing. So it's a very, as I say, so Muslims believe in the Quran as that is, Muslims believe the Quran is not the result of any man's effort, but it is the divine inspiration, the wahy, okay, revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam through the angel Jibreel over the period of 23 years. The idea that runs through the divine book is the urgency of repairing that broken relationship between Allah and humanity. And this relationship is restored through worship, through dhikrullah, through ibadah, and through ita'ah and ittiba. This is the leading theme of the Quran, okay? Secondly, the Quran teaches tawheed, this belief in the oneness of Allah. And what is tawheed is really this oneness of Allah, the creator, the supreme Lord of the universe, the owner of the universe, this mighty, majestic, unique being, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can't even describe him, although the Quran gives many, many names, the Asma'ul Husna, which give us a good idea of this just, loving, caring, Al-Wadud, the loving God, and also, of course, Al-Jabbar, the very dominant, and Al-Qahhar, the one who will take you to task, really. So yes, this is the Lord the Quran is talking about, and then of course the idea of the life after death, and that he has he does his hidayah, his hadi, the guide, and he does his hidayah, he gives that hidayah through his prophets. He guides us through these wonderful prophets. So that's the second special feature of the Quran. Tawheed, of course, on every page of the Quran, in every verse of the Quran, in every section, it's all actually geared towards making us tawheedi, people who believe in this oneness. Have you ever noticed, our wonderful BBC has oneness as one of its signs? It's, uses oneness. I don't know what it means by this oneness. I hope it's the Tawheed of Allah and unity. It's really an amazing concept, this idea of unity in itself, unity in the universe, unity in the whole creation, unity in fauna and flora. It's an amazing theme in itself, actually, because it comes from this one Lord. Therefore, everything is designed in this amazing way, in units, and there is a very clear scheme in which Allah has designed his living world and even the non-inanimate world as well. Third very special feature, I think what makes the Quran so special is its teachings on moral values, social responsibilities, and spiritual ideals. And of course, these are the three inner aspects of our lives. And, sometimes the Prophet ﷺ said, the only reason I've been asked to center is to do this work, moral, social, and spiritual. He said that, إِنَّمَا بُئِسْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. The only reason I have been sent is to actually perfect the human character, to give you the ways and the means of building and developing and growing as a caring, loving, forgiving, grateful, appreciative, modest, humble, gentle people, really, free from arrogance, anger, jealousy, and greed. So that is the essence of the Quranic teachings, really. And I'm going to talk about that at the end when I talk about one of the ways of looking, examining where are those moral, social, and spiritual teachings in the Quran, okay, and through that worksheet that I've created. The fourth thing that makes the Quran very special is really it's a very unique and miraculous nature. The Quran was revealed in a very special way to the Prophet ﷺ over a long period, 23 years. It's a miracle, to be honest. One of my friends, Dr. Bassam Sai in Oxford, is a great Arabist and has written a lot of work, done a lot of work on this. And he shared with me Surah Al-Muddassir, and he says, you know, when Surah Al-Muddassir is either the second or the third surah that was revealed. Then when this was revealed, he said, you know, nearly 80% of its words and phrases were really unique and special, the way they were put together. You see, remember the Arabs of the Prophet ﷺ's time were poets. Well, some of them, they were poetry was, let's say poetry was very popular, okay? So they liked to write poems, and they had a, you know, a very poetic sense. But poetry is a rich way of expressing emotions. Perhaps not facts sometimes, but what the Quran was bringing now was something quite unique. You know, it was prose. The Arabs didn't have prose, you know, and so here, you know, they were really puzzled. They were actually impressed by the Quran to such an extent they had to say, "Haza kalamul bashar." This is not the speech of a human being, really. Even the three small ayahs when the Prophet read them, "Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar fasalli li rabbika wanhar inna shani'aka huwa al-abtar." You know, this is an amazing feat of conciseness and minimalism. You can't really dream of being minimalist like this. Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar. We gave you plenty. Okay, we gave you plenty. So worship your Lord and make sacrifice, and it's your enemy who will have who will not live on. Okay, so it's an amazing brief encouragement, reassurance to the Prophet ﷺ, who was very distraught at that time because his son had died, and the Meccans were mocking him, saying, "Now Muhammad is abtar. He will not be survived by any male heirs. Therefore, he's abtar, na'uz billah." And the Quran revealed this. You know, you have been given plenty of everything, from the Jannatul Firdaus, Hawd Kawthar, to the Shafa'a, Maqam Mahmud. But even here in the world, you will have the largest following that any prophet ever dreamt of. Subhanallah. Anyway, it was a miraculous book. Its nature is miraculous. And I think, so the next point I want to make about the Quran is that, you know, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Muhammadur Rasulullah, Khatamun Nabiyyin, is the Uswatun Hasana, the role model. Okay, the Quran presents him as the role model. So he's the central person. You know, he's this, we would say, the hero, the central figure of this great narrative is Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Quran also makes many amazing prophecies, okay, and subhanallah, they are coming true. Even about the pollution and the contamination of the seas. Zahar al-fasadu fil barri wal bahr. Okay, it talks about Yajuj and Majuj. You know, this really overwhelming group of country, a nation who will overwhelm the world. Okay, and who could that be? Well, I'm not going to put any names to it. It talks about, you know, there's an amazing, in Surah Al-Hadid, the amazing idea that the iron, the element iron, from which we build our bridges and so many other things, the Quran says it came down from the space. Amazing, you know, and of course we know that this is a recent, perhaps 60, 70 years ago, it was found that, yes, all the elements of the earth are actually created in the stars, and they are stardusts. You know, they came onto the earth. Anyway, that's another amazing way the Quran presents. Perhaps one of the greatest of the Quran was, we reveal this wonderful book. We are its protectors. In other words, we're going to protect it. Nobody will be able to interpolate, change it. Okay. And sadly, all the other scriptures, we have Bible with its 70 books, almost all of them changed, interpolated, wrongly interpreted, and wrongly presented. okay? But the Quran remains pristine in its original form. Its prophecies are amazing. So another feature of the Quran is the impact of its teachings on humanity and on human society has been amazing. You know, from the 7th century, the Muslims are now regarded as those people who laid the foundations of modern science. I said modern science, okay, not the Greek science, of modern science. And this was all due to the Quran. The Quran changed the mindset of its readers. It invited people to become logical, rational, observant people. That is exactly what science is all about. Science is actually about observing the nature, measuring things, and really using reason and intelligence actually to come to conclusions. So this is, you know, the force field of the Quranic teachings was amazing. But in human life, in human society, you know, look at, you know, just take the teachings of إِنَّمَا الْخَمْرُ وَالْمَيْسِرُ وَالْأَنْصَابُ رِجْسٌ مِّنْ عَمَلِ الشَّيْطَانِ. Okay? Alcohol, drugs, gambling are all filthy deeds. Avoid them. فَاجْتَنِبُوهُ. Stay away from them. Run away from them. Avoid them. Subhanallah. You know, that is you know, that teaching alone has saved and is saving millions of lives, okay? And then what about its teachings on sexual purity? That is one of the most amazing teachings. Surah An-Nur is really a great surah which presents 10 rules of how to gain that purity. You know, and it's interesting, the word azka and purity with regard to sexuality is really important, because without that purity, you know, your life will be blighted. Your life will be very unfulfilled and a sorrowful state, to be honest. And today, you know, this is, they call it sexual revolution or sexual madness or craziness that we see around us. So that is where even the Quran is needed even more now than ever. And, you know, recently we've been through this hashtag Me Too and the Harvey Weinstein evil, and that just shows you how important this, you know, these teachings are. And of course, about social relationships and healing human wounds and how to deal with conflict are some of the amazing teachings of this book. So its impact is real. You know, it's having impact on people's lives, okay? The Quran's teachings are really based on reason. So that was my 8th point about this book. So what I was trying to show you is we have a book which is amazing, okay? Let me now move on to the next section of my talk. It's really, what is guidance? What are we talking about? What is hidayah? You know, the Quran says, هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Guidance for mindful, guidance for God conscious, Allah conscious, God fearing people, guidance for people who are meticulous about following the divine commands and avoiding the manhiyat, okay? They carry out imthasalul awamir and ijtinabul nawahi, okay? They carry out the divine commandments, they avoid. These are the muttaqin, the mindful people. But so what is this guidance? Here is the, you know, the guidance is a clear message, a direction of journey, the route, including the resources needed to reach the destination. So it's not just the route, you know, it's not just pointing out, go right and left. No, it's actually holding the hand and saying, I'll take you there. It provides all the resources as well to get to the destination. The Quran uses the word wasila. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha wabtahu ilayhi al-wasila. Believers, be mindful and get that resource. Seek those resources, those wasilas, you know, that will take you to your destination. So when we talk about guidance, this is the resources. So the clear message, the destination is there, and the route and the means to get to it. All this put together, you know, I understand that to be hidayah, okay? But do we have the means, okay? As I've got something here about how Allah guides and hidayah in the Quran. I'm going to go leave that. So how does Allah guide? Well, we know that Allah is Al-Hadi, Ahadi, Hadi. Allah is Hadi. Wonderful name of Hadi. Ya Hadi, oh guide. And of course, we teachers are also guides in our limited way. So I hope, we can make this our wazifa. Ya Hadi, Ya Hadi, Ya Hadi. Why am I saying you make this wazifa? Why am I saying you use this and repeat it hundreds of times a day? Ya Hadi, Ya Hadi. Oh guide, oh guide, oh guide. You know what he's saying? Ya Allah, you are perfect guide. Make me a good guide. Make me a good teacher, effectively. That's what you're really saying. So that's why, by saying Ya Hadi to Allah constantly, you're also saying, I want to be, a guide. And after all, the whole point of having the Asma'ul Husna is we actually imitate and we become Khalifatullah. That is what it means. Khalifatullah actually means imitating the divine in the most beautiful manner. Okay, so Allah, first of all, Allah's great guidance comes to the prophets. The prophets are the specially chosen people. They are Mustafas, they are Mujtabas, which means selected and elected by Allah for His guidance. Okay, and there's a particular way they guide, and they are guided by Allah. Then what about you and me, human beings? What means do we have to guidance? Okay, what means do we have? And what means do we have to guidance? Well, here are some that I've come across. Intelligence. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us intelligence and the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills, cognitive, problem-solving skills, a mental ability involved in reasoning, perceiving relationships, analogies, calculating, learning quickly. Simply the ability to learn and understand in a practical terms. It's the ability to apply knowledge and to learn from experience. Now, you as teachers, mashallah, this is what you're doing. You're developing the intelligence of your students all the time. Intelligence is this Allah-given gift that is necessary for getting guidance through understanding divine intent and purpose. The Quran says, when David and Solomon made a judgment about the owners of the flock of sheep grazing their sheep in the field. Here the Quran is telling us how Allah guided, made Solomon understand, فَفَهَمْنَاهَا, okay, made Solomon understand the situation and guided him to make the right decision. When Ali radiallahu ta'ala an, the fourth caliph, was asked, if it taught you something unique that he has not informed anyone else? Ali said, no, I swear by him who made the seed and created human being. Allah has given everybody an understanding through which they can understand the message of the Quran by reflecting and thinking about it. Subhanallah. This is narrated by Imam Bukhari in his Sahih. Amazing. I hope you can see, of Allah isn't rituals, rituals. It's actually for thinkers, for understanding people, ulul albab, the intelligent, the mutafakkareen, the mufakkareen, the mudabbareen, the strategists, those who plan things. Okay. Secondly, the second capability that Allah has given us is linguistic ability. The ability to explain things, and to tell the truth, fight and challenge falsehood. This is a very special gift. Allah says, Ar-Rahmanu 'allama al-Qur'an, khalaqa al-insana 'allamahu al-bayan. The most kind taught the Qur'an. The most kind taught the Qur'an, created human beings and taught them the way to communicate, taught them the art of communication, allamahul bayan, and taught human beings how to speak, how to communicate, use this vocabulary, use this voice effectively, use their vocabulary, use this wonderful skill, that we human beings have to a unique level. No other creature has this in this. So Allah has given us, so I'm talking about, the sources of hidayah that you and me are equipped with. We've got intelligence, we've got linguistic ability. Thirdly, longing to learn. Now, this is a gift that Allah has put in all of us, the desire to learn and understand. So divine assistance and approval that supports guidance. This points to the fact that when Allah sees something special in a person who deserves guidance, He provides it. For example, what is that ability that attracts Allah's kindness to us, and then He opens our hearts and mind? What is it? Well, the Quran talks about it in several places as being, the munib, inaba. When you turn to Allah, when you yearn and long for Allah, then what happens? Allah comes. Allah's hidayah comes. He expands your breast, opens your mind, unlocks the mind, So it's this yearning, that really then provides us, then attracts the divine rahmah, and then that gives us further guidance. So the longing itself. And finally, there's few other things, but I'll just finish off with another important capability that we have that leads us to guidance is actually the ability to listen carefully and to understand. Some people pay attention when others are speaking to them. What a great habit that is. I hope you're all paying attention. Some people say that on Zoom, you do actually get everybody's attention far more than actually if they were face to face. I don't know how true that is. You teachers, perhaps you can tell me. Paying attention and listening carefully. This is the characteristics of people of Allah. Allah says, this is in the Quran, Allah says, good news for those who avoid serving evil forces and turn genuinely to Allah. So give my servants good news. Those who listen attentively to what is said and follow the best of it. And Allah has guided these, and they are the intelligent. Surah Az-Zumar. And Imam Fakhruddin Razi, commenting on this, he says that this describes people who examine every religious proposition in the light of their reason, accepting that which their mind finds to be valid or possible, and rejecting all that does not measure up to the test of reason. In Razi's words, the above verse praises those who follow the evidence provided by one's reason and reaching one's conclusions in accordance with the results of critical examination. Most of what I've just said to you about hidayah and guidance from a beautiful short essay written by Imam Hafiz ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawzi, famous for his literalism, died in 1383, 14th century, great scholar. I copied this actually, this guidance from his original article in Arabic on guidance. What is guidance? Now, let me turn to our topic, which was, some approaches, effective approaches to study of the Quran. And I've whittled it down to 7 golden rules, I call them, okay? And these 7 golden rules for effectively studying the Quran. The first one is, the Quran is a book of guidance. Now, that's why I've been speaking for so long, to convince you that really this is a book of guidance. It's not a science textbook. It's not a physics or chemistry or humanities or law book at all. All right. Don't come with that attitude to it. You need to come to it as something very unique. Those special things that I told you about this book. So it's come with that mind to it. That it's a book of guidance that impresses the reader, drives home the message deep into the heart and mind. It molds the attitude and inspires you. Every surah develops its central theme from the beginning to the end in a logical fashion. Oh, you say, well, I can't see that logic in it. Well, it's because it's the way it's been presented, the translation, the way it's been presented, this atomistic approach which Professor Abdul Halim talks about. So there is a gradual move from the beginning of the surah to its completion, okay? It's not disjointed. Where there are digressions, there's a really great explanation for those digressions. Anyway, so that's the first thing. And in order to help you do that, in my translation, I've done a very comprehensive, introduction to each surah, where I identify the central theme and then show how it develops from beginning to the end. So you must read the introduction. And so it's clear and knowledge and understanding. I am going for guidance. I'm going for a session of guidance with my Lord. That's really important. You know, Dr. Iqbal was a great philosopher and a poet, and a great lover of Islam and the Ummah, a great scholar of Quran and of Deen. He used to read the Quran. He says, I used to read the Quran in my childhood, and my father used to ask me, Iqbal, what are you doing? And I used to say, I'm reading the Quran. And my father used to always say, son, read it as though Allah is revealing to you. You are the recipient of this book, okay? Have that communication with Allah. This is Kalamullah, the speech of God. You are the listener, you know, participate. Listen, good listener, you know, winks. A good listener shows expressions of amazement, expressions of delight, expressions of joy, expressions of horror. Are you doing that? He answers the questions. Yes, no, alhamdulillah, mashallah. And so you come to it, you know, it's a living book. That's what he's saying. Ee kitab zinda ast, he said. This is a living book, really, for living people from a living God. So that's how you come to the Quran. That's the first thing. Secondly, you know, I just sidetracked. I don't know where I've gone to. I've lost it. Let me go to the second point is that the Quran gives direct instructions. It doesn't speak in abstract terms, okay? So what do I mean by that? Well, it's not really, it's not a philosophy book. There's no philosophy as such, okay? I once attended a conference with a group of about, I think it's about 12 philosophers, 4 or 5 Muslims, and the rest were American and British philosophers. We had a 3-day conference. And I remember, you know, at the end of the conference, one of the philosophers, American one, said, can somebody tell me what have we been talking about over the last 3 days? And I thought, mashallah, you know, this is what happens. But here, you know, in the Quran, no, it's not like that. It's actually, it's not abstract. It is real. It is absolutely real. You know, Aqimus Salah, worship Allah, anfiqu fi sabilillah, spend in the path of Allah. Okay, Atuz Zakah, you know, give, and Jahidu jihadan kabira. Okay, make this amazing struggle. Okay, do this amazing jihad in the path of Allah. Okay, so you know, it's a real book. And giving real instructions. So that's the second thing. So what does that mean? Well, it means you carry out its actions. You look for those, you know, the takeaways. And I'll talk about those in our, when we talk about the worksheet at the end. Thirdly, the Quran routinely keeps things very brief. You know, it's really interesting. You know, it doesn't tell you long-winded stories. It doesn't tell you details. Very rarely does it even mention the name of the person or the place. Really, it just says, get on and listen to the, you know, the story, and then derive the moral of it. Okay, what is the lesson you learned from it? You know, it's the Quran seems to be in a rush to get to the, you know, to the end, to get to the lesson, and to give that rather than, you know, the details of it. And that is where, you know, really problems happen. People, and that's where some explanation is, footnotes from the translator are always helpful. The fourth strategy is, you know, the Quran is an amazing guide, not a textbook. Okay, it persuades, dissuades, pricks the conscience, flips from present to the future, back to the past, reasons using evidence from nature, human experience, and history. So follow its guidance. You know, so it's a, this is a, you know, again, we have to learn its you can say peculiar and weird style. Yeah, we have to learn that. You know, and every book, you know, has its own style and its own way, and you as teachers will know, you know, and similar the Quran has it, and we need to study that. We need to learn that that structure of the Quran. It's weird and particular and peculiar style. The Quran demands the reader's full attention, okay? And it asks questions. And this is why, you know, يَدِلُّ بِهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيَهْدِي بِهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. Okay? You know, people, some are misguided and others are guided. Those who are misguided are those who don't pay full attention to it, really, okay? And those who pay attention are guided. Can't persuade through reason. So when reading, ask yourself, what's the message for me? What does the majestic Quran want me to believe or accept? What does it tell me about Allah? What does it expect me to learn about the hereafter? You know, hereafter is another underlying theme of the Quran. It's woven in the fabric of the 140 surahs. You can't take away the idea of hereafter. It's there everywhere, okay? Just like Tawheed, you know, permeates the whole Quran. So does the hereafter. Because after all, that is where we're going. That is our destination. That is what the Quran is there to make sure that you gain Jannah, okay? And you avoid hell. Seventh is, here is a simple scheme for studying a section of the Quran. You know, read the Arabic page tunefully, melody, with tajweed and tartil. And then read the English translation. And get the overall picture. And in my sections, you read the section and the heading of it. Then compare what you read with what you already know about this topic. Summarize as you go along and hold the overall argument in your head. Look for what Allah is telling you to do. As you read, check each section. You know, I'm now telling you, those of you who teach English and know how to do teach comprehension, this is what you teach your students to do. Then read more carefully, looking for the divine orders, the reasons and the divine phrases. As you are persuaded, consider why. Once you've understood this, feel happy. Read to apply to yourself for its long-term positive results. You know, that is how, inshallah, you know, these are the 7 very simple, effective means of or tips for really approaching the Quran so we can get its message. I'm going to stop here because otherwise I'll go on forever. So Baba, I'm going to stop here, and inshallah I'll be happy to discuss, answer questions and as you like.
Thank you. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you so much for your passion, really. And one thing I really admire, Dr. Musharraf, is you mentioned 50 years, but the passion is still there. And I think if we take anything away from you, it's that passion for the Quran, mashallah, which is infectious, I think.
Babar, I've just seen a wonderful mentor of mine, my teacher, Brother Akram Khan Chima there. Assalamu alaikum, Chima. Can I just say salam to him first? Sorry,
Yeah,
you carry on now. Chima sahab, assalamu alaikum. What a pleasure to see you.
MashaAllah, good.
MashaAllah.
And I know that, as I showed at the beginning, this is your piece of work, your translation in plain English of the Quran, the majestic Quran. And so we're going to open now to the questions from the virtual floor. But while people are putting their hands up, how long did it take you to complete this this piece of work?
I started in 2014, and in 2018 I finished. It took me 4 years. When I say 4 years, I'd been planning for many years, and this whole thought, I'd been discussing it, planning it. But 4 years was almost full time, to be honest. This was 4 years of my best 4 years of my life, inshallah.
Oh, wow. MashaAllah. Good. Okay. Right. Let's go to questions then, inshallah. So if you have a question or indeed a comment, you can spell the word, write speak in the chat box, or you can put up your hand. Right. Now I'll have to scroll to see if anyone's got their hand up. Let's check gallery view, I think. Yeah, there you go. Right. Would anyone like to, has anyone got a question? If you haven't got a question, I will ask. I've got lots of questions. I've got endless questions to ask, but I want to give you an opportunity, because sometimes people say, I talk a little bit too much when it comes to these webinars. So I want to give you an opportunity. I don't see any hands up at the moment. Okay, speak. So we have somebody called Jamina Qureshi. Jamina Qureshi. Let me find where you are, Jamila Qureshi. There you go. You're unmuted now. Yes. Off you go. What's your question or comment?
How do you use the knowledge of Qur'an to cultivate our youth to love the Qur'an? MashaAllah, you have that passion. How do you transmit that passion to our youth?
Yeah, very good question. Dr. Musharraf,
Okay.
that passion that you have, how can we translate that to our youth?
I think we need to really tell them, we need to actually educate them that this is a very special book. It's and those features and benefits I mentioned, I think we really do need to mention those to them and get them to understand. For example, you know, talking about the predictions of the Quran in itself and prophecies of the Quran. They are actually amazingly, for example, when it says, وَأَنزَلْنَا الْحَدِيدَ, and we sent down the iron. Now, I looked up my teacher's translation, which was done in 1960, when they didn't know about iron, where it came from. And he translated, and we created the iron. And in fact, most of us didn't do that. We created iron. And yet, Anzalna does not mean created. It means coming down. And of course, in the 60s, the scientists discovered that, you know, all the elements on Earth actually were not made here. They are made in the core of stars. And then, you know, we are stardust. They've come here. Just, you know, we are actually made of those elements. And so that is an amazing, you know, the Quran could have said, خَلَقْنَا الْحَدِيدَ, and that would have been accurate. وَجَعَلْنَا الْحَدِيدَ, and we made the iron. And then, you know, the prediction about, for example, about the victory of the Romans over the Persians. You know, it's interesting that Professor Gibbons, in his Fall and Decline of the Roman Empire, he actually cites this verse, and he says, nobody at that time in 612 could have imagined that the Romans would ever be able to defeat the Persians again. But the Quran was saying very soon, meaning within 3 to 9 years' time, bid'a sinin means within 3 or 9 years, they will have a victory. And lo and behold, it happened. But then it talks about, you know, zahar al-fasadu fil barri wal bahri bima qasabat aydin nas. You know, this idea that, you know, there is havoc and chaos and contamination and pollution on land and on sea. Come on, you know, what is Edinburgh always talking about? You know, so I hope you can, you know, and there are dozens of others, amazing ones, to be honest. And we need to impress our, you know, young people that this book, but more than that, it's really, it's beautiful teachings that give justice. You know, one thing our young people are really good at is the sense of justice. I'm sure you as teachers know that children want fairness. And the Quran is about fairness. Everywhere it talks about fairness, its message is one of fairness and justice. And I think, you know, there is really, it's really trying to, you know, move away from this. You know, we're still like 7-year-olds trying to read the book. You know, we're not free readers yet. We're still on, you know, we're not free readers yet. We still depend on learning phonetics so that we can learn to read words and make sentences. We really need to grow up and go to the book now. And that means reading English, all right? I would, to be honest, I was surprised. I heard a mufti the other day, Pakistani mufti, saying this. This is really interesting. And I was just flabbergasted. He said, no, I was delightfully flabbergasted. I was really pleased. Somebody asked him, Mufti Sahib, you know, if somebody reads 15 sparas of the Quran and another person just reads 1 raku but spends a lot of time thinking about it, which one is best? And, you know, he said, the person who spends time thinking and reflecting even on one verse, that is better than 50 years of reading the Quran. I thought that was really great, you know, because, you know, we associate Pakistan and with rote learning, with just parrot fashion reading of the Quran, which we're wonderful at. You know, we love to read Quran with tajweed and with this Arabic, style, and we try to copy the best Tablawis and Abdul Samad, Abdul Basit, and so there's, mashallah, do it. I love it. But come on, get to the essence of it, man. Go and read what it's saying to you. That is where the transformation will happen, because once they get the message, honestly, people will change. I got a message from a wonderful sister who 2 days ago, an email, Te Jiva, MBE, and she sent me this message that I've been reading your Quran, and there was a young man in our family who was on the verge of leaving Islam. But since he's been reading the Quran, alhamdulillah, he's now strong. That is the change. And I've heard many other people send me messages like that. That's not because of my translation. It's because of the Quran. You know, the Quran is a book that changes your life. Mashallah. I think we need to convince them of that.
Thank you so much. Okay, we have a question, which I suppose is a more practical one, which is about how do we make a start? So we've got, we've got 7-8 days left of Ramadan, inshallah. If we make firm intention to understand the Quran, to study it as the way that you're saying, what can we all do, make intention to do right here, right now, that could be the start of a big change in our lives in terms of understanding the Quran?
Okay, let me suggest a very simple scheme to you, okay, for effective reading. Let's say you select the 27th juz or 28th juz or 29th. I'm saying that because they've got shorter surahs. Select one juz and say to yourself, these next 10 days, I'm just going to make sure that I understand the central theme of each of these surahs in juz 29. I know how they flow, what's the message of them, what's the objectives of this, and how does it provide me moral guidance? What are the moral values it's teaching me? What are the spiritual values and ideals that it's enlightening and growing in me? And what social responsibilities is it imposing on me? And I've got a scheme for that, a worksheet, and I can email you that, Brother Babar, and you can share it with everybody. Worksheet. And so what I suggest you do is you take surah, say Surah Al-Mulk, okay? This is 2-page long. It will take you about 15 minutes or 20 minutes to read the Arabic, and depending how fast you read, and the English, perhaps no more than 10 minutes. But no, you don't do it like that. You don't just read like a parrot. You won't get anything. No, read it like the sections I've got there, and then reflect and try to link each section with the previous. Try to understand what the Quran is doing. You'll begin to perhaps see something called a ring structure, but I'll leave that for another lecture. Okay, so so you spend half an hour on Surah Al-Mulk, looking at how the whole surah talks about Tabarakalladhi biyadihil mulk wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. It's talking about how Allah is capable of, has the power, knows the way to bring the dead back to life. Okay, he can do it, and it's trying to convince you of that. Okay, the mulk, the dominion, the power, the control that Allah has over everything. Babar, if we can get this sense, and Allah is the controller, Allah has this power, Allah is the owner. My goodness, once you have that sense in you and you really understand that, the idea of Ba'ath Ba'd al-Maut, the resurrection, opens up to you, and you say, wow, I now understand how, Allah will be able to do this. And the faith, you will move from ilmul yaqeen, you've got a knowledge, you've learned, you've got the knowledge now, but you really haven't understood it. You haven't witnessed it. You haven't experienced it. You know something about the theory. You've not done the experiment, I'm using the scientific metaphor. But until you've done this experiment, you really don't understand the theory either, and you can't develop it. So this is getting the mushahada, the experience. The Quran is to be experienced. We lack that, to be honest. And that is why we don't associate with it. We don't associate with Islam because we don't experience what it gives us. And when you read, you know, I'm just talking about Surah Mulk, for example. If you were to read Surah Mulk in that way, and you begin to experience the might and the power and the control of Allah, mashallah, you know, you'll begin to say, wow, you know, oh, Allah is great. Allah is this and that. So my very simple scheme I'm saying to you is, sister, take any of the juz you like. I'm suggesting 29, 28, 27, because they've got surahs you can get your teeth into, all right? Literally, and begin to, you know, unpack them in a short period of time. And you can also begin to see some logic in the order of these surahs. You know, in my new, we've now just brought out a paperback version of the Majestic Qur'an. And what I've done here is, this has got no Arabic in it, okay? Unlike the other hardback. This is just, and in it, what I've done is, we've changed all the Arabic terms into English. But what I've done something else very special is the 114 surahs Jimasab, actually can be categorized, classified, grouped into 20. So I've done that, and alhamdulillah, you know, you can now begin to see, wow, you know, there is a logic in this. I've taken this from various sources. I don't think you'll see this in, well, I don't think you'll see it in any translation, but here is, so for example, the first two surahs, Baqarah and Al Imran, are the two bright lamps. An-Nisa, Al-Ma'idah, An'am and Araf, laws rooted in spiritual and social values. Al-Anfal and Tawbah, the struggles for truth and justice. And then follows the surahs of the prophets. The prophets struggle to guide people. That is Surah Yunus, Surah Hud, Surah Yusuf, Al-Rad, Surah Ibrahim, Al-Hijr, etc. So, you know, the whole point is, you know, we really need to believe that the Quran is a book. A book. A book isn't for reading like a parrot. A book is to be understood. If you don't understand it, you haven't read it, you're a nutter, you know, you are a fool, absolute fool, you know, who claims, you know, to have read it, and that you don't. So really, I'm sorry to use harsh words, but come on, that is the reality. And we Muslims, as Quran laments, we have now become that, and we are really losing the blessings of this great book. And what a pity, even in Ramadan, we don't get those. And we just focus on listening to, oh, beautiful Sudais, beautiful Husri, beautiful, you know, this new guy, Ar-Rad, Qurdi, oh, subhanallah. And that is what pleases us. I think that's a very superficial, and only 10% of benefits of the Quran. We're missing out on 90% because we're not thinking about the meanings and the message. I want people to focus on the message, inshallah. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, I've done it again. I've been talking without the mic on now.
Okay, Baba.
I said, Jazakumullah khair, Dr. Musharraf. Thank you so much for your presentation and your answers to those questions as well. I wish we could go on longer, but unfortunately, it is only an hour session. I would like to draw our audience members to the flyer which appears on the screen, and it's just to remind you about the 5th session of the series, which will be taking place next week at the same time on Thursday, 4 o'clock British summer time. And we will, inshallah, be speaking to Dr. Mahira Ruby, who is a lecturer, author, and family coach. And she will be talking about a really important topic, I think. It's called it's maintaining relationships and mental health. And I think this is a very timely topic. It's something that affects not only ourselves, but our families. And many of us who are thinking about, you know, going back to school, you know, people are talking about going back to school. Many schools around the world have already started going back. And so I think thinking about relationships and also mental health is going to be really, really important, inshallah, as we go back to some form of normality, inshallah. Okay, thank you again, Dr. Musharraf. A real pleasure, inshallah. Hopefully we can have you back again at some point. I'd like to thank our audience, our virtual audience members, inshallah. I do apologize if there are any further questions that we couldn't answer. Inshallah, we'll see you next time, next week. Until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you.